Well, joining us now is a brain expert, Dr. Brynn Winegard, who teaches at the Schulich Executive Education Center, as well as being a prolific keynote speaker and a go-to media expert. Welcome, Brynn.
Thank you, Kate.
So we want to know about aging brains in the workforce. We have a couple right here.
We all do.
So can you explain quickly what happens when our brains age?
Yeah. So, what I look at is the healthy aging brain, how the brain actually ages healthily. And it ages relevant to the workforce and relevant to our working lives in three major ways. And that's physically, functionally, and then vocationally. And so what I talk about are some of the physical changes that are relevant, some of the functional changes, what you get better and worse at, and then what kind of jobs, roles, projects, those kind of things, that you're better at later in life or worse at.
So quickly tell us the physical changes.
Yeah, so there are 6 types of physical changes, and I call them the C's, and I just named them that to make it easier for audiences. But it's capacity, conductivity. So capacity rather is the gray matter. That's the neurons. Connectivity is the white matter or the axons. How you're able then to process all of the cerebral spinal fluid, so CSF, the chemical components. So there's actually changes in dopamine, especially dopamine, but all of the neurotransmitters in your brain. There are, what are the other ones? Capacity, conductivity, connectivity, and then chemical. So you're really looking at 6 major changes that take real effect over the life course.
So what are the other 2 components? Physical,
functional, and vocational.
Okay, functional.
The functional. So you get better and worse functionally. Which would you like to tackle first?
Oh, the getting better. I always like to go with the good news first.
Yes, the good news first. The good news is that you do get better functionally. One of the ways that you get better functionally is that over the life course, you get better at dealing with people in all kinds of situations. So your emotional intelligence goes up, as does your mirror neuron system get better, get more acute, get better at being able to predict what someone else is feeling and thinking. Mirror neurons are exactly as they sound. Their whole purpose is to make you understand what someone else is thinking so that your brain is firing like theirs is. And so those mirror neuron system, that gets actually a lot better. And then you get better at what we call theory of mind, or TOM, which is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So empathy, sympathy, that kind of thing.
Well, isn't that all part of your EQ, your emotional quotient?
Absolutely, right? And so really you're getting better in a few ways. And I say it's 4 different ways, but it's your ability socially, emotionally, functionally, and practically. So those are the ways that you're getting better over time. One of the other ways, of course, is that most conscious thought is happening in the prefrontal cortex right here. And that conscious thought is getting better over time. So your PFC, we call it, prefrontal cortex, that's getting more and more developed over the course of your life. And so that allows you bigger picture thinking, more planning ability to predict cause and effect, ability to understand consequence, longitude. And so that has a real effect, obviously, for you in the workforce and elsewhere.
So when we're talking functionality, that portion, and we're talking about getting worse, would that be where you put like forgetfulness and losing your memory?
Yeah, so there's 4 major ways that you also get worse. And so that's in your senses, those dull over time, your memory, obviously, in all 3 types of memory, your intelligence, as well as your knowledge. So what you know gets worse, and your ability to solve problems gets worse to some degree in different ways. And then, of course, your memory gets worse and your senses get worse at detecting things.
So from an employer's point of view, for people aging in the workplace, what are the skills that are valuable to them as opposed to skills that maybe a millennial has? Yeah, so millennials obviously have different, characteristics, right? They're newer to the workforce, so they're not as leery of experimentation. We can't reinvent the wheel, but the idea being that they're a lot more willing than an older brain would be to try new things and to experiment and to be more technical and tactical and those kind of things. So in the workforce, that's the value of a millennial. The value of a boomer is that they're really good because of this functionality that has gotten better. Some of these things have gotten better. They're really good at negotiating, at mediating, at planning, at strategizing, at managing, at leading. They make for really good counselors and therapists. They make for good, regulatory and policy making, that kind of thing. And so I sort of, I often have a list with me of exactly the roles that we expect you can present your best self in as you age in the workforce. So is it a harmonious coexistence between the two in the workplace, millennials and boomers?
Right. I mean, it can be for sure. The consensus typically is that it's not particularly harmonious, that there are definitive challenges with dealing with two different generations of people, specifically because historically, we've never seen people this old, frankly, in the workforce, because there was mandatory retirement and people were less healthy, less happy. They were sicker earlier. So we've really extended the healthy brain and the healthy working workforce that is still active, which means that this is the first time we're really seeing them interface with such a younger demographic.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about then what we should be doing to keep our brains active.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have about 12 different things that I always say.
I've got my pen. Okay.
Yeah, good. Yeah. That these are the things that you should really be doing. One of the things is to stay cognitively healthy and active. So try to eat, and it's not enough to do Sudoku and Ken and that kind of thing, but stay active as you can. Stay learning and stay curious. I think that's really important, in the interest also of laying down new neural pathways and of really developing your brain. It's a muscle and it needs to be practiced, no different than anything else. Stay physically active. That has real ramifications for the neurotransmitters and a lot of the chemicals in your body. Stay sexually active. That's something that we forget.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. And that's really important too for those neurotransmitters and the happy hormones. As we age, our ability to actually extract nutrients from our food gets a little bit more challenged. So eating smaller amounts of highly nutritious food, but more often is important.
Okay, now you've got a list here that I'm looking at, and it's like my diet. It says brain foods: chocolate, caffeine, almonds, berries, and avocados.
Very good. Anything with protein. Yeah.
Yeah, but those are all good.
Yes, they're very good.
Why is caffeine good for your brain?
Caffeine and taurine, believe it or not, and nicotine have specific receptors in our central and peripheral nervous system that really help us perform. Now, it's an inverted U shape on a graph, if you will. There's such a thing as too much. Right? And so everything in moderation. But the idea being that actually those are compounds that your brain and your nervous system really like.
Now, I know that you support the Women's Brain Health Initiative founded by our friend Lynn Poslins. So for women specifically,
right,
what should they be doing differently than men to stay healthy?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that if we knew that answer, WBHI, Women's Brain Health Institute, wouldn't have to exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
The idea is really that the truth about the research is that they're non-discriminate when it comes to the gender of the subjects in a lot of this research and in these research trials, despite the fact that dementia, Alzheimer's being one of the types of dementia, inflicts women at twice the rate than men. And so we really do need female-specific research to help us with that education, better diagnostics, better prevention, that kind of thing.
How do female hormones affect the brain?
I mean, almost perfectly, right? Like your brain is run on a system of electrical energy and hormone energy. Basically, it's chemical and electrical. And so, that's a huge question. I'm sure we don't have time for, but put it this way, hormones have a huge effect on how your brain operates and how you feel, your emotional state, how it is that you process information, how you think, how effective your brain is. And so keeping and caring for your hormones and for your hormonal health is really important when it comes to brain health. For sure.
Yeah, because I noticed when I was pregnant, there was that maternity brain thing going on. Like I go to the fridge and I couldn't remember what I went for. And I noticed a similar thing happening when I went through menopause.
Right.
It's like I've just gapped out. Like what's going on here?
Yeah.
So do you see a lot of exciting research?
I do. I get to read really neat research. I get to do really neat research, which is really fun. I mean, my focus is on the healthy aging brain, so I steer clear of the pathologized, clinicalized. Yeah, but that stuff is also in its infancy because the baby boomer population is the largest one to have ever lived. They're staying in the workforce. They're aging healthily.
So now everybody wants to know what's going on with them.
All of a sudden, it's popular research. Yeah.
How can people connect with you and find out a little more?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn at Dr. Brynn Winegard. You can find me on Twitter at Dr. Brynn Winegard. And probably on Facebook at Dr. Brynn Winegard.
Yeah. All right.
And you're speaking everywhere. So,
I do.
Yes, you do.
Yes, bookings through the National Speakers Bureau. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you both.
And when we come back, the conversation around bullying is a mission for our next guest. We'll talk to Jacqueline Kendall about why this is so personal for her. This is what she said on The Jewel. Stay with us.
She might just change.